Good day.
Good day.
I'm Steve,
And I'm Joanne.
and together we're Sod We're Retard. And this is day 2 of our Isle of Mull vlog, and we've come back from the future.
Time travellers.
Yep, it doesn't feel quite right.
But it's our first full day, isn't it? It's
Yes.
our first full day of the holiday.
Our first full day of cruising,
Yeah.
and we woke up to a very different set of weather than what we'd had experienced the night before.
Yes.
I had a very good sleep. I didn't
Yeah.
didn't feel any real movement in the boat overnight.
Yeah. So did I. I didn't feel any movement at all, actually. I might have been so tired I just out like a light. But didn't feel any movement whatsoever. In fact, I've had worse on a big cruise ship.
And the boat,
You know.
the boat, scarcely rocking, which was a bit of a contrast to what had been the day before when we first got
Yeah.
on it. But
Yeah.
it didn't feel as if it was rocking a lot.
You get woken up by Alan starting up the engines, don't you?
Yes. He's the engineer, by the way. So
Yes.
they start the engines up about 7:30.
Yeah.
And that then provides the
Hot
power for the charging devices and things like that, and also the power for the shower.
Yeah.
So we had a shower, got
That
up.
was interesting.
Yeah, interesting dynamic.
Trying to sort that out, yeah.
Yeah.
I won't go into that too much, but yeah, it was interesting. It was doable,
Yeah.
even for me. So,
And then we had breakfast, and it was very clear that the weather was a lot different to what it had been the night before.
yeah,
We sort of arrived in a fairly wet weather, and actually it was quite dry and quite sunny.
but the sun was shining, wasn't it, a bit?
Yeah,
Yeah.
which was really nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, the plan was that we would go further up north and then swing to the east and go to a place called Glencoe, which is on Loch Levan. And as we were going along, we could see, if we squinted and there wasn't any mist, we could actually see Ben Nevis in the background. And yes, it wasn't the best of views, but we were led to believe that was Ben Nevis anyway. We then went into Loch Levan, and as we approached Glencoe, well, the weather got a little bit worse, and it started raining a bit.
Yes.
Not too hard, but spitting a bit. But it was something that was a bit of an omen as to what was going to come later, because the weather doesn't half change around that area. One moment it's beautiful sun, the next moment it's mist and rain,
Tipping down.
and then it will change yet again. So we had some good stories of the local history from the engineer, Alan, and his crib sheets as we went along. He told us about the famous Glencoe Massacre, and he told us about how the islands were used by the various clans that frequented the area, all of which was interesting and fascinating stuff. We then actually anchored up just outside the Glencoe Boat Club, and we had our first taste of getting to
on
land.
the tender.
So how was getting on the tender, Joanne?
It's a bit scary, but I did it, and there was lots of guys to help me. So yeah, I did it. I did it fine, and it was all okay, wasn't it?
Yeah, we got the second tender.
Yeah.
So the tender only takes about 5 to 6 guests maximum. So they do 2 trips because there's 10 guests in total on the ship. I always wonder what would happen if there was a hole in the ship, and then how the tender would be used to evacuate.
We'd all get a bit wet.
We'd all get a bit, or some of us would get, half of us would get a bit wet anyway. But we were the second tender that went ashore, and we were told that there was effectively a small town centre and a local museum if we kept walking to the left, and we were given our time to come back to the rendezvous and be picked up by the bosun and the engineer and return to the ship.
So off we went.
So off we went, and we hadn't gone
and it
far.
did start raining. Yes.
It started raining,
Yeah.
and rained a bit more, and then rained a lot more on top of that.
And it was quite a busy road. I don't know what that road was,
Yeah.
but it was quite a busy road that we walked along.
I want to say the A82, but it was something like that.
And then we got into Glencoe, didn't we?
Yeah.
And then they had a lovely little museum.
The Clencoe Folk Museum. It was quite expensive to get in, but it was actually really interesting. You liked it because...
Well, the roof. I loved the roof because, and I'm going to keep on harping about this all the time, all of these vlogs. I'm a huge, huge Outlander fan of the television series and the books. And if anybody is a fan and they know the on the television series, Jamie meets Claire for the first time, and it's that little low, just one-story buildings with these lovely, beautiful sort of grass roofs. And it was one of those, and I stood there for ages going, I really like the roof. I really like the roof. But I did really like the roof. But it was really interesting inside. Yeah. And I think we got some footage. One of the dresses in there, well, I could just imagine Claire
in one of those
from Outlander in one of those dresses.
But they also had other exhibitions in there showing some of the more later, more contemporary artifacts from around the area. And they also had a exhibition showing how a doctor's room would be set out. It was interesting. It was
also very applicable to Outlander because Claire's a doctor. She's a time traveller, I should say. Anyway,
not like us,
Yeah, well, we're faking it.
But no, that was really interesting, and we walked around. There were two buildings, two prime buildings, to go and see various exhibitions and bits of the museum. We then left there.
And then it really poured, didn't it, if I remember right?
It absolutely poured. Well, it poured just before we went in.
Yeah.
It seemed to...
poured while we were in there, because there was other bits you could go in, and you had to come out, and then you got wet, and then went in another bit.
It only seemed to pour when we had to go outside.
Yes.
Anyway, we left there. We went back to the rendezvous area, which was the pontoon, and got back on the tender, which was again interesting.
Hair soaked.
Yeah, bedraggled. We were both very bedraggled. And then we went back to the ship and basically got back on and had lunch. And the captain had decided that we were going to go further up Loch Levan. And
none of the Majestic boats had been up there, is that right? If I remember rightly?
Yeah, it was the first time that a Majestic Line boat had gone that far.
Yeah.
And the idea was to anchor and have a look around that area. But unfortunately, we weren't able to get any purchase on the anchor when we put it in.
A sandy bottom.
A sandy bottom, and effectively the anchor was just pulling out. It wasn't making any drag on the bottom, and therefore it wasn't safe to moor there. So we had to turn round, go back up Loch Levan, and then back into the loch and past where we had moored overnight. And we were now in Loch Linnhe, making our way back towards the Isle of Mull and back towards Oban. Scenery was absolutely gorgeous all the way along.
Fantastic scenery, beautiful.
And I think it stopped raining at that time. It seemed to stop raining. And we approached a small island, which I believe is Shauna Island. And we then moored up between Shauna Island and the mainland. And we took another tender over to the side of the mainland, to Linnhe, I think that's how you pronounce it, Marina, where we then got off and explored a bit further. It was quite a nice area around there, actually.
No busy roads.
No busy roads. It was a little, almost dirt track that was almost a complete straight line leading up to a bridge and beyond. off to one side there was fields and farmyards, and as we walked along, 2 deer came out of the wood, and one of our party spotted them, but by the time I'd raised the camera, the deer had decided to depart.
You weren't quick enough, were you?
But as we walked along, there was some really nice patinaed and rusty ships to one side. I think it might have been a mink farm, because there was a generator there that said such and such mink farm generator, which may be a clue. But we just walked along. Somewhere there's supposed to be a castle that was worthy of actually having a look round, being one of the finest examples of a medieval tower or keep in the area. And we thought we'd try and see if we could get there. We sort of improvised on the directions, and when we got to the bridge, it was quite clear that there was a little path going up to one side of the bridge, and we thought we'd try there and see what that led to. That led actually to a little bit of rocky coastline, and we could see the castle, which I believe is called Castle Stirker, in the distance.
Sounds like a vampire place, doesn't it?
It was intriguing actually, but there was no clear way round to the castle. And later on I learned that actually it's only from certain directions that you'd get access to the castle itself. Yeah. If you wanted, it had to be at low tide as well. But it was a gorgeous area. It was very tranquil. It was quite rocky, quite difficult to manoeuvre, particularly holding a camera, and we did our best. And then when we found that there was nowhere to go, we came back, tried another route, but that just seemed to be going into open fields and then private land.
No way out.
No way out, as they say. So we gave up on that and decided to return to the marina and wait for the boat to come and pick us up, or the tender to come and pick us up. We then stayed at that mooring overnight, and had a meal and then a chat with our fellow cruisers in the evening, and a chat with the staff and the crew before actually then retiring to bed. So you can now see our second day of our Isle of Mull vlog.
Enjoy. Hopefully.
After a good night's sleep, we emerged from our cabin in the depths of the boat to have breakfast and explore a little bit more. This is the wheelhouse where the skipper steers the boat. He has the same 2 screens that we found in the deck saloon, and a whole load of other equipment, including, would you believe, a remote control so that he can steer the boat not being in the wheelhouse. So the boat has 2 levels. This is on the topmost level, which houses the wheelhouse, and it has the sun deck and another small deck out the front overlooking the bow of the ship. This is the sun deck, and no loungers for people to put the towels on first thing in the morning. There's just a couple of benches for people to sit on and look out and admire the world. Shortly after breakfast, either the engineer or the skipper started up the engines, and we were then ready to go. And off we go.
you're enjoying our content, then think about liking it, and you can always subscribe and ring that bell for notifications when our new content comes out. So this island is the Graveyard Island. It has over 300 graves, including the clans of the Stewarts, the Campbells and the MacDonalds. The last grave was in 1972, and because of the state of the gravestones, it's prohibited to actually go on the island. So we move on towards Glencoe, and as we make that movement, we learn about the Glencoe Massacre, where the Campbells massacred a number of the MacDonald clan where they were staying, having been quartered with them for 2 weeks. One night, on the 12th of February 1692, they upped arms, killing 38 members of the Campbell family, some whilst they sleep. It's rumoured that some of the soldiers that were going to do the murder let their would-be victims know beforehand, so they had a chance to escape.
going to rain in a minute, folks. It's done nothing but rain here. But we're all suited and booted, aren't we, Steve?
We're
We're suited and booted. We're walking into Glencoe. Very interesting. Some of the staff crew on the boat were telling us we passed Dead Man's Isle, was it?
Yes.
Where there's 3 different clans. Now, what is it, Steve? It's the Campbells, the MacDonalds, and the Stewarts. And you can only, if you're one of those, you can be buried on it, although I don't think there's been any burial since 1972, which is very interesting. Then we passed another little island, and when there was ever any friction, the chiefs of the Campbells, MacDougalls and the Stewarts would go out to this island with alcohol and cheese.
Whiskey to be
Whiskey and cheese, and they would discuss it all until they'd come up with an answer to whatever the problem was, or whatever. And then they'd sail to another island, and then they would make it law. So it was really interesting, especially for an Outlander fan.
But they would also light a fire.
Yes,
so
that was right.
They could be picked up off the island in order to then go to the other island to make it enjoyed in law.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Look at all these lovely hills. Fantastic. Doesn't really matter what the weather is. I think it's going to pee down in a minute. There's our little boat there, the Glentarson, which is very, very nice. We're liking it. We're liking this holiday. Obviously the tide's out at the moment.
Very different to anything we've ever done, isn't it?
It is. I actually got in the little tender. Okay, there was 2 great big guys to help me, so that was good. And
it's the first time you've called me a great big guy.
Well, it was you. It was you and 2 other guys. So that was great. The Glencoe and North Lawn Folk Museum. Amazing roof. That roof amazing. The old mangle. So we're going to go in there. The nearest cafe is Crafts and Things. A little cafe. You need to go in that direction.
Okay, that's good. That's great. Thank you. Back in the tender.
Yes. Got back in.
Anticipating people going in, but just. Yeah, that's right. There we are.
What's the plan now? Are you going to back Campbells? What are you moving on?
Yes, we're waiting for a wedding time. We're further up to Kentallen Bay to the shore. We think we're going to be the first boat ever to get up here. So, Kentallen Bay. It's where one of the owners was born. He was brought up there. So we think we'll be the first boat to get up there. Yeah, excited to fly.
So we had survived our first trip out in the tender, and it wasn't that bad. It was quite an experience. Anyway, the skipper now has plans to take us further into the loch, apparently to a place where none of the Majestic Line ships have been before. And the plan is that we will moor there and have a look around that area before going around and back to where we're going to moor for the night. And the route got quite a bit thinner as we made our way further into the loch. So we arrived at where the skipper wanted us to be, but unfortunately we weren't able to moor. Well, the lock bed was quite sandy, and we were unable to get any purchase from the anchor, and therefore it wouldn't be safe. So we decided to turn around and go back down the loch to where would be our eventual mooring for the night. Back in the deck saloon, and this is the dining table where we all eat. And so we landed at the marina, and there was a single road that led away from the marina, and our plan was to see if we could find a castle that was near about and have a look round it. So we set off down the roadway. We hadn't gone far before one of the party spotted a deer, a couple of deer actually, coming out of the woods and into one of the fields. Lovely sight, but they were far too quick to get them on the camera. I love an old wreck as it sits there proudly in its patina. We'd spotted the castle in the distance and navigated round this very stony path to see whether or not there was a way to get to it. But unfortunately, it was completely surrounded by water and there was no immediate access from the direction that we were coming from. So Castle Stirker is a 4-storey tower house or keep of medieval origins, and it is based totally on an island and only accessible at low tide and then only from a specific direction. It's a listed building and is one of the best preserved medieval towers in Western Scotland. Made it back to the marina with ample time to spare and had the opportunity to look around that part of the area whilst we waited for the tender to arrive. And this is the journey that we undertook on the second day, leaving our overnight mooring from the first night, travelling up to Glencoe, and then further up the loch where we aborted our anchor before turning round. We then headed back the way we'd come, past where we'd had our first overnight stay, and eventually ended up mooring between Shauna Island and the Scottish mainland.